Hello, friends. I'm DJ Lance Rock, and I have to say, Rock and Roll Grad School is awesome!
This is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. First-time callers, long-time listeners.
Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a real good time together. We are talking for the second time with folk singer John McCutcheon. And folk singer, I feel like, does a disservice.
I know. I mean, well, not that being a folk singer is ever a disservice. It's an
Correct.
incredible.
Yes, it's not a, we don't mean it as, I don't mean it as an insult. I didn't want to lump you in there.
Thank you.
I don't mean it as an insult, simply as I think his work and his voice and stories reach far beyond a simple genre clarification or categorization.
A singular.
A singular,
Not simple.
yes.
A singular.
Yes.
Yes.
And so it's a lovely conversation. We go a little bit more into all the things he talks about in his songs, and it's he has a new record out that's really lovely and doesn't shy away from the hard truths and other stuff, but that should not make it feel like a chore, because it is not. It is not a homework lesson. It's a record.
Correct.
So it's a lot of fun. So enjoy that.
Yes.
Happy New Year. I feel like this is the first thing we're recording in the new year, even though we have spoken and wished each other Happy New Year prior to today.
We have, indeed. We
I
have
think so.
not
Yes.
spoken to our guests or our audience. So.
Yes. So Happy New Year to you and yours.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just starting to get all the fun summer news, and it's just starting to come out in like a slow trickle, and it's just picking up speed.
Do you?
I do. I mean, I sent you that thing, U2 and an interview, The Edge, promising music imminently, new music imminently, which makes it sound like a matter of days rather than weeks and months and everything
Well,
else.
that's often what they do, yes.
But it makes the heart jump a little bit when you hear that.
Of course, they like to do that.
And the last record, what was it called? The How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb
How
Part
to
2.
reassemble.
Yes.
Which
Really
was
fun
good
little record.
It is a fun little record, but the title is very disturbing.
I don't like their habit of doing companion records with things.
Well, that doesn't bother me, but the title was like, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Don't give me songs of experience and songs of innocence. Give me two separate things. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, give the guys a break. Like, they're great lyricists, great songwriters. Like, if they can't come up with a great headline, it's okay.
I mean, that's what Larry's there for.
To come up with a great headline?
I think sometimes they need to turn inward. Sometimes the answers coming from inside the house, I think.
Is it? Sometimes you
Mhm.
can't make it on your own?
Exactly.
Mm.
So I've heard.
Mm. Well,
So-
sometimes you're stuck in a moment you can't get out of. So you just.
Exactly. That's why you need Adam there to be like, hey, get out of that.
Yeah, well.
Or to offer a hand or just the end of his space to grab onto and pull yourself to safety.
And sometimes that's why you maybe just do a, I don't know, something on a theme. You just go with the theme. What's the thing that you go with it? Sometimes you need Van Dyke Parks.
Variation on a theme?
Variation. Thank you.
Today I turned 70. It happened so fast. I guess now I know that the die has been cast.
Congratulations on the record. What number is this for you? And I feel like we talked about this before, but it's an impressive number.
It's 45.
Do you still enjoy the process?
Oh, I love recording, especially these days when for 3 years I wasn't able to play live with the people who I love. I love what they do with my songs because it's unlike a lot of people. I don't, I give them chord charts, but I don't give them parts because I've been a part of recording sessions where the fiddle player is handed a part he's supposed to play. But this is, what do you guys want to do? And every now and again, one person will step up and say, "Oh, this is my song," and I'll just really turn it loose because they're better musicians than I am, and it's really fun to do it. So especially absence makes the heart grow. You know, because we did 2 albums where we just simply each recorded our parts in our individual studios, and that worked because the engineer is so fabulous.
Hmm.
We sort of jigsawed it all together. But yeah, I still do. I mean, I've got my next 3 albums already lined up.
I mean, it seems like the idea of handing a folk musician a chart is sort of the antithesis of folk music. Isn't it supposed to be everybody bringing their little piece to the puzzle and it gets solved this decade or decades from now, but it just everyone's part of this conversation?
Yeah, though these guys are real studio dogs.
Hmm.
I mean, the fiddle player Stuart Duncan is probably the most in-demand fiddle player in Nashville.
Hmm. Certainly.
And John Carroll, the keyboard player, was one of the people in Starlight Vocal Band, and played with Mary Chapin Carpenter for years, as did J.T. Brown, the bass player. So they, I think I'm their one foray into folk music because most folk musicians can't afford them.
I mean, but
That's a
again,
good play.
if you get those people to tell
Yeah,
them
and
exactly
I'm
what to
always,
play.
every time, Stuart Duncan will just send me a text and say, "What's next? When are we going to do the next one?" And I just think, wow, I am so lucky that he likes my music. That, as John Carroll said when I first, I mean, Stuart has played on my albums off and on, but now he's in the band. And the first time I ever took stuff to him, John Carroll said, "Oh, you're taking it to a fiddle player. Who are you taking it to?" And I said, "Stuart Duncan." And he said, "Whoa." And I said, "Yeah, you could do worse." And John said, "Everybody's worse than Stuart."
True statement.
And one of the things that I love that you do on this record and other records is the little notes explaining where the songs were written, how they were written. And listening to the record before I pulled up the lyrics, I was listening to the hammer going, this must have been written around the time of Hank Aaron's passing. And then I get to the liner notes and go, oh, you wrote it the day he died.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about that song, I mean, one, you can clearly tell your love of baseball runs deep. The fact that your song presupposes that heaven has a designated hitter rule.
I've gotten some pushback on that.
Really? My only qualm as a Red Sox fan was the fact that you put Tom Seaver in there, but I understand in the greater conversation of things, we
Well,
need to give him his
I
dues.
did have Cy Young.
You did, yes. But how do you, I guess, when you get to these songs, I mean, for example, that one about Hank Aaron, you just sat down that day upon learning of his death and just sort of composed this tribute?
Yeah.
Or are these things that you're just
Well,
walking around with for a while?
I wish I knew that, or if there were a correct answer. I mean, the more I write, the less I know about how it happens. Because you become humble. I mean, the last album I did was with Tom Paxton, and we're still writing together. In fact, that's one of the next albums I'm doing, is with another album with Tom. And every now and again, we will get done with something and we'll both go, wow, we're not that good to have written that. During the pandemic, when I was relieved of all responsibilities of normal life, and I'm not only talking about touring, I'm talking about mowing the grass or going to the grocery store. And I was quarantined up at our little mountain cabin, and the only thing that was left of my work was writing. Because this was the album I was going to, about half of this was the album I was going to record in March 2020. I had the musician's book, the studio time book, and well, we know what happened. I discovered a way to really surrender to the song. It sounds kind of woo, but I'm not a woo guy. But every writer I know gets to this point where they realize, as Billy Collins, the poet, once so presciently said, your pen becomes less a dictation device than a flashlight. And so you're exploring where the song is going, and it's sort of like, I don't know if either of you meditate, but I do every day. And there's this place where you just go, oof, there you are. And you're not bothered by outside interference, and you're just saying, okay, I guess I'm writing now. I did an album years ago where I wrote with some of my favorite authors, and I remember talking with Barbara Kingsolver about her writing process. I said, you write these majestic, epic novels, Poisonwood Bible, Demon Copperhead. Do you have a storyboard? She says, well, I have kind of a basic idea, but it would be boring just to write down what I already know. I enjoy turning pages with my readers and not knowing what's on the other side. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. And Henry Aaron was a part of my life for as long as I was aware of things. He came to play for the Milwaukee Braves when I was 2 years old. And my dad had a picture of me in a Braves jersey in my crib. That's how deep we were up there. Baseball. There are a lot of villains in baseball, and there are precious few really righteous characters. And it was sort of like Obama. They were looking for shit on him for 8 years, and they never found a sliver of a bone in his closet. Same thing with Henry Aaron. In an age when, Barry Bonds supposedly broke the home run record with a little bit of help. Even Henry Aaron did the right thing. He says, congratulations, records are to be broken. He didn't even say, well, he did it on steroids.
Right.
He just did it right the whole time. So I'm seen as the guy who writes songs for the dead. There was one for John Prine. There was even a song on Leap, that said, "I'll write you a great song when you're dead." Someone wrote me and wanted me to write a song for them.
Well, you could do worse as far as eulogies go.
Right. We can
And
only
one of-
hope that you'll write us a song when we bite it.
Yeah. Or maybe I'll write a fill in the blank, huh?
Ooh, like a Mad Lib.
The Mad
That's
Lib
what
eulogy.
Yes,
Fill in name, place, what they did for a living.
right.
Some important fact, everything else is boilerplate.
Yes, adverb.
There you go.
And there's like a grace and a gratitude from a lot of these songs that comes through.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Heidi?
Oh, go. You're right.
No, it's just interesting. It's and you hear it in your other work and on other records, but this one, for whatever reason, struck me particularly, that there is a sort of gratitude and thankfulness for, I don't know if you want to get really hokey and say for today because you don't know what's happening tomorrow, but there's something about it that just feels very, an acknowledgement of what we got's pretty good, and we need to remember that and celebrate that and remind each other of that a lot.
Well, I think there is a lot of reminding. I mean, look at the MS St. Louis.
That was one I was going to mention. Yeah.
This is. I wrote that when all the stuff on the southern border was going on, where they were separating families and supposedly kids were in cages and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, how do you write this that doesn't sound like a bumper sticker, and that really makes you think about the whole thing differently? So I know, I guess I have a lot of Jewish friends. With a name like McCutcheon, I'm not a Jew, but it seems like most of my Jewish friends knew the story of the MS St. Louis, and I knew about it from them, my generous friends who understand I'm teachable. And I just thought, okay, let's write a song that just states what happens, and by the end of the second verse, you're outraged. And then you say, well, this kind of makes me remember the MS St. Louis in much the same way that Redneck talks about the origin of the term and the way that language and what you call yourself is almost the first thing that is disparaged by your enemies. You take what you call yourself and then you make fun of it. And then you ridicule it. Oh, she's a social justice warrior. Or this is a real kumbaya moment when nobody knows what the fuck kumbaya is about, except African Americans. And so it's an insult. And a friend of mine who's a musicologist says that's what happened with the N-word and why so many hip hop artists use it so freely, because they're reclaiming it. That's for them to decide, but that's what Redneck was essentially about. Mm-hmm. And it was, again, a bit of history. Here's what happened. And I do that a lot because I'm a history nerd, and we live in a world in which we think everything is happening for the first time, when in fact, so much of this stuff repeats itself because we don't know history. We don't, so, the history we're making today has a shelf life of about 24 hours. And then people don't think about it anymore, but a song you can sing every night. It was sort of the reason that I wanted to write Christmas in the Trenches, so that you could see this iconic, or the streets of Sarajevo, where people respond to ugliness and violence with an act of beauty. I mean, how crazy is that? But I guess it's what I learned growing up.
Yeah, it seemingly permeates all the songs on this record, again, in a way that strikes me as unique for songwriting in general. But yeah, something about this one really, really resonated with me.
Oh, good.
It's interesting too, like you said, the history side of things, and trying to impart some of this stuff to your listeners, but then also not make it feel like a history lesson, which is its own, high wire act.
Yeah, it's when I did an album in honor of Woody Guthrie's 100th birthday, because he was a really seminal figure in I learned to play the guitar from the Woody Guthrie songbook. I didn't know he wasn't a guitar instructor. It's the only thing in our library under guitar in the Dewey Decimal System. I wanted to reimagine these songs so they didn't sound like I was just plucking them off of a museum shelf. And then what followed that was the 100th anniversary of the death of the labor songwriter Joe Hill. And I really, because he was someone who really, I don't know that he was the first person who ever did, but he took popular melodies and wrote new words to them. And so he was writing stuff that was, you know, for a Salvation Army marching band and other stuff that was sort of ragtime. And I wanted to sort of dress it up in those songs up in those clothes, but also bring these ideas forward, because this guy's been dead for 100 years, and you know, we're still dealing with a lot of this stuff. And I very intentionally didn't want to make it seem archival. Same thing with Pete Seeger. And I'm working on 2 other sort of centenary albums right now that are very intentionally going to be pretty contemporary. So yeah, I want to tie it to like the end of, you know, the last verse of Redneck says, now a century later, so much is the same. Or the story of Peter Norman. I mean, I sang that in my last tour of Australia, and people, number one, couldn't believe a bloke from the States would know anything at all about Peter Norman, because he had only recently been rehabilitated in Australian society. But there is a fascinating story. And I couldn't even put all of it in I couldn't put all of it in the song. But, you know, this stuff is really very much alive to me. And that's how I try to write it, and certainly how we try to arrange it and perform it.
Do you think it'll ever not be relevant? Do you think we'll ever find a time where the more things change, they actually change?
Oh, you know, every time I do a benefit concert for, I don't know, Habitat for Humanity or the American Cancer Society, because my mother died of cancer, or whatever, I always say, I really hope there's a point where we never have to do these concerts as a fundraiser for this organization, because what they were created to combat, they won.
Right, of course.
There's not homelessness anymore. There's not cancer anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So you gotta hope. I mean, and maybe that's what you're feeling permeating this recording.
Right.
It's a talk about a bumper sticker. It was a great phrase when only few of us knew it, from Gandhi. Be the change you want to be, that you want to become.
Right.
You know, you put these things out there, and they're your little kids. You usher them out the door, and you say, go off, do your work. I have no control of you anymore, and let's just hope you do good work. And I don't think that in my lifetime that I'll have to stop
I know.
writing hopeful songs in hopeless situations, but that's what we do. I mean, let's face it, the empirical evidence is always going to be on the side of the pessimist.
Right.
But that's a hell of a way to live your life.
It's a terrible way to live your life, right?
It's a bad operating principle.
I totally agree.
So you go out there and you say, don't you wish it was this way? Or don't you think we could do better? Or how about this? And more often than not, and I'm never telling people what to do, because I think that's condescending and arrogant. And I don't have the answers.
Right. If none of us do.
Is to present the questions in new and hopefully provocative ways. And then you're smart enough, you bought my CD.
That makes them brilliant.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you can figure this out. You know, I don't have to tell you, or we'll figure it out together. Because it's not enough that I decide I'm going to do this. This is stuff that requires a lot of people working together. We found that repeatedly. And it's so hard as Americans when we have been force-fed this rugged individualist pablum, which is designed to make you feel like a failure. Because unless you're a Rosa Parks, unless you're a Martin Luther King, unless you're a Jackie Robinson, you're a failure, And actually, all those people had a lot of people behind them and with them to make this. Rosa Parks on the bus in Montgomery, that was a highly organized, planned event.
For sure.
The folklore makes her out to be this maverick who just had enough. No. She got training at the Highlander Center in East Tennessee, and then the Montgomery bus boycott did not materialize overnight, but it was ready the next day.
Field of Stars by John McCutcheon is available wherever you get your music January 10th. For more information, you can check out his website, folkmusic.com.
Rock and Roll Grad School is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, because your impassioned review is just as honest as us standing backstage waiting to come back on for the encore. For more information, you can check out our website, rockandrollgradschool.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hegquist and myself from our world headquarters located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing executive producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Good night, drive safe, and may all your favorite bands stay together.
It's just out of reach. You believe